Captain Rex Morgan knew something was wrong the moment his ship's proximity alarms started screaming like a banshee at a funeral. The bridge of the human vessel Vengeance shook violently as they dropped out of hyperspace directly into what appeared to be the middle of an intergalactic board meeting. "Well, this is awkward," Rex muttered, watching through the view screen as dozens of alien warships turned their weapons toward his comparatively tiny vessel. "Sarah, please tell me we didn't just gate crash the universe's most exclusive club." Lieutenant Sarah Chun, his navigation officer, frantically worked at her console, sweat beading on her forehead. "Captain, according to these readings, we've somehow stumbled into the Deathworld Council's annual summit. You know, the meeting where all the galaxy's most dangerous species get together to compare notes on creative ways to eliminate each other." Rex laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just 3 months ago, these same species had voted to classify Earth as a Class X death world, the most dangerous rating possible. They'd also voted to quarantine humanity indefinitely, claiming humans were too unpredictable and violent to be allowed into galactic society. The irony wasn't lost on him that they were having this conversation while surrounded by ships belonging to species that literally ate their young for breakfast. "Sir," Communications Officer Jake Torres called out, his voice cracking slightly, "we're receiving about 50 different hail requests. Most of them seem pretty hostile." "Put the prettiest one through," Rex said, settling back in his captain's chair with the kind of casual confidence that made his crew both admire and worry about his sanity. The main screen flickered, revealing a creature that looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a particularly angry porcupine. Its 6 eyes glowed with what Rex assumed was righteous indignation, though it was hard to tell with aliens. The translator crackled to life. "Human vessel, you have violated sacred space. I am Commander Zzeth of the Korthak Empire. You will surrender immediately or be vaporized where you float." Rex couldn't help himself. He started chuckling, which quickly escalated into full-blown laughter. "Oh, that's rich. Sacred space? You mean the same sacred space where you all get together to plan the genocide of entire species? The same meeting where you decided my people were too dangerous to exist freely in the galaxy?" The alien's mandibles clicked furiously. "Your species was evaluated fairly. Earth is a nightmare world that produces psychotic killers." "Psychotic killers?" Rex's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Commander Zzeth, remind me, what's your species' traditional greeting again?" "Oh, right. You literally tear off pieces of each other's exoskeletons as a sign of respect. And you're calling us psychotic." Sarah leaned over to whisper urgently, "Captain, their weapons are charging. All of them." Rex held up a finger, still grinning at the screen. "Before you do anything hasty, Commander, I have a proposition. Since you all seem to think humans are such terrifying Death World survivors, how about we prove it?" The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. Even the alien seemed taken aback by the suggestion. "What are you proposing, human?" "A challenge. Your council evaluates species based on their survival capabilities, right? Well, here I am with my tiny little ship and my crew of 5, surrounded by, 50 of the galaxy's most advanced warships? If we're really as dangerous as you claim, this should be interesting." Rex could see his crew exchanging worried glances, but he pressed on. The plan forming in his mind was absolutely insane, which meant it just might work. "I propose a test. Give us 24 hours. If we can survive whatever you throw at us during that time, and maybe even surprise you a little, then humanity deserves a seat at your big, scary council. If we die horribly, well, problem solved for everyone." Commander Zzeth's laugh sounded like metal scraping against glass. "You cannot be serious. You wish to challenge the entire Deathworld Council with one small vessel." "Why not? According to your own evaluation, Earth is more dangerous than any of your homeworlds. Shouldn't that make us more qualified for membership, not less?" The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Rex could practically hear his crew's thoughts racing. "Captain," Jake said carefully, "what exactly is the plan here?" Rex turned to face his crew, his expression suddenly serious. "The plan, Jake, is to show these pompous alien bureaucrats exactly why they were right to be afraid of us, just wrong about what to do about it." 10 minutes later, Commander Zzeth's face reappeared on screen, accompanied by two other aliens Rex didn't recognize. One looked like a crystalline spider. The other resembled a walking nightmare, made of tentacles and teeth. "Human Captain." The spider thing announced in a voice like wind chimes in a hurricane. "I am Counselor Vex of the Silicon Collective. We have discussed your proposal. It has been centuries since a species directly challenged the Council's authority." The tentacle monster leaned forward, revealing far too many eyes. "I am War Prime Gorth of Consumption Fleet. Your boldness is either admirable stupidity or stupid admiration. We have not decided which." Rex nodded politely. "Pleased to meet you both. I'm guessing you've reached a decision about my little proposition?" Vex's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with amusement. "Indeed, we accept your challenge with modifications. You will face 3 trials, designed to test the qualities we value most in Deathworld species: adaptability, ruthlessness, and survival instinct. And if we succeed—" "If you succeed," Gorth rumbled, "humanity will be granted full membership in the Deathworld Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. And if we fail, then your species quarantine becomes permanent, and your home world becomes a case study in overconfidence." Rex's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Deal. What's the first trial?" The 3 alien leaders exchanged what might have been glances. Vex spoke first. "The trial of adaptation. You'll be transported to the surface of Karos, for a planet where the environment changes every 6 hours between Arctic cold, desert heat, toxic swamps, and hurricane-force storms. You must survive for 24 hours and retrieve 3 artifacts hidden across the planet's surface. Sounds like a fun vacation spot. What's the catch?" Gorth's tentacles writhed with what Rex hoped was amusement. "The planet is inhabited by the Stalkers, predators that have adapted to each environmental change. They hunt in packs and have never failed to kill visitors within the first 12 hours. "Of course they haven't," Rex muttered. "Trial number 2, Vex continued. "The trial of ruthlessness. You will face 3 champion warriors from different council species in single combat. However, the combat is not to the death, but to surrender. You must break your opponents with a fight without killing them, something that requires a particular kind of psychological warfare." Rex raised an eyebrow. "And the third trial?" "The trial of survival instinct," Gorth announced with obvious relish. "You and your crew will be placed in a scenario where saving yourselves requires sacrificing something else of value. Most species choose self-preservation. We are curious to see what choice humans make." The captain looked around at his crew, seeing a mixture of terror and determination on their faces. Sarah was gripping her console, so hard her knuckles were white. Jake was muttering what sounded like prayers under his breath. Chief Engineer Maria Santos was checking and rechecking her equipment with obsessive precision. Security Officer Tom Walsh was cleaning his sidearm for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "Captain," Sarah said quietly, "you do realize they're basically asking us to prove we're the most dangerous species in the galaxy, right?" Rex's grin widened. "Sarah, 3 months ago, these same aliens looked at our planet and decided we were too scary to let loose in their galaxy. They saw our movies, our history, our news broadcasts, and concluded that Earth was a death world that produced unstoppable killers. Now, they want us to prove they were right." He stood up, straightening his uniform. "The funny thing is, they have no idea what they've actually done. They've taken a species that thrives on impossible challenges and told us we have to be dangerous to earn their respect. This isn't a trial, people. This is Christmas morning." Tom looked up from his weapon. "So what's the real plan, Captain?" Rex walked over to the view screen, staring out at the assembled alien fleet. "The real plan, Tom, is to show them that they made one critical error in their evaluation of humanity. Which is, they think we're dangerous because we come from a death world. They don't understand that we didn't become dangerous because of our planet. Our planet became a death world because of us." The bridge fell silent as the implication sank in. Outside, the alien ships were already preparing the first trial, their weapons and sensors focused on the small human vessel. "Commander Zzeth," Rex called out, his voice carrying across the comm channel. "We're ready when you are. But just so we're clear on the terms, When we complete these trials, humanity gets full council membership, correct? If you survive, yes. And full council membership includes voting rights on all matters, including classification of other worlds and species. There was a pause. Of course, all council members have equal voice in our decisions. Rex's smile became positively predatory. Perfect. Then let's begin. As the Vengeance was tractored toward the transport coordinates for their first trial, Rex couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Deathworld Council had spent centuries maintaining their exclusive club by ensuring that only the most dangerous species in the galaxy could join. They had created a system where violence and ruthlessness were not just rewarded, but required. Now they were about to learn what happened when you invited the one species in the galaxy that didn't just survive their death world, but had spent thousands of years turning survival into an art form. Captain, Maria called from her engineering station. All systems are green. Emergency supplies are loaded. Environmental suits are ready, and I've made some modifications to our equipment that should give us an edge. What kind of modifications? Maria's smile was almost as dangerous as her captain's. The kind that would probably violate about 15 different galactic treaties, if we were actually signatories to them. I love it when you think creatively, Maria. Jake, any final words from our hosts? Jake checked his communications board. They're asking if we have any last requests before transport begins. Rex settled back in his chair, watching as the alien ships positioned themselves around the coordinates for Keros 4. In a few minutes, he and his crew would be teleported to one of the most dangerous planets in known space, with nothing but their wits and whatever equipment they could carry. Tell them, Rex said, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had absolutely no business being as calm as he sounded, that we'll see them in 24 hours. And remind Commander Zzeth that when this is over, we'll be expecting a formal apology for that whole quarantine thing. As the transport beam began to energize around them, Rex couldn't shake the feeling that the Deathworld Council had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They wanted to test humanity's survival skills, but they forego the transport beam deposited Rex and his crew onto the surface of Keros, for with all the gentleness of a meteor strike, they materialized in what appeared to be a frozen wasteland, with howling winds that cut through their environmental suits like razors made of pure cold. Well, Rex shouted over the wind, checking his suit's readings. The good news is we have about 5.5 hours before this place turns into a desert hellscape. The bad news is that according to these scanners, we've got company incoming. Sarah pulled up her tricorder, its screen flickering in the harsh conditions. Captain, I'm reading at least 12 life forms approaching our position. They're moving fast, and their biosignatures suggest they're significantly larger than us. The Stalkers, Tom muttered, checking his weapons charge. Right on schedule. Rex surveyed their surroundings, noting the jagged ice formations and complete lack of obvious shelter. Maria, please tell me those modifications you mentioned include something useful for our situation. Maria grinned, pulling what looked like a standard emergency beacon from her pack. Captain, meet the Multi-Environmental Adaptation Device, or as I like to call it, the MEAD. It analyzes local conditions and provides tactical recommendations based on human survival patterns. Jake squinted at the device. That looks like an emergency beacon with extra wires taped to it. That's because it is an emergency beacon with extra wires taped to it. But the wires are very important wires. Before Rex could respond, the ground began to vibrate with the approach of their hunters. Through the swirling snow, shapes began to emerge. The Stalkers looked like someone had crossed a polar bear with a mechanical spider, each one the size of a small shuttle and moving with terrifying grace across the ice. Meade says we should run, Maria announced helpfully. Running sounds good, Rex agreed, already moving toward a cluster of ice spires. But remember, we're not just trying to survive here. We need to find 3 artifacts while avoiding death by giant spider bears. As they reached the relative shelter of the ice formations, the lead Stalker let out a roar that sounded like a freight train colliding with an orchestra of screaming violins. The sound echoed off the ice, creating a disorienting chorus that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Psychological warfare, Rex noted approvingly. I respect that. Sarah, Can you triangulate the source of those artifact signals while we deal with our new friends? Sarah worked frantically at her equipment, while the others took defensive positions. Got something, Captain. First artifact is about 2 kilometers north, but there's a problem. There's always a problem. What is it this time? It's in the middle of what appears to be a stalker nesting ground. I'm reading at least 30 more life signs in that area. Rex peered around an ice pillar as one of the stalkers tested their defenses, its claws scraping against a frozen barrier with sounds that made everyone wince. 30 more. Of course there are. Jake, remind me why we thought this was a good idea. Because you said it would be fun, sir. I need to work on my definition of fun. Tom fired a warning shot that struck the lead stalker in the shoulder. The energy blast barely scorched its hide, but it did get the creature's attention. All 6 of its eyes focused on Tom's position with predatory intensity. That's not good, Tom observed with remarkable understatement. The stalker charged, moving faster than something that size had any right to move. Rex threw himself sideways, tackling Tom out of the creature's path just as massive claws raked through the air where they'd been standing. New plan, Rex announced, rolling to his feet. We're not fighting these things. We're using them. Using them how? Sarah called out, still working on her scanner readings. Maria, how long until the environment changes? Maria checked her readings. 4 hours, 37 minutes, until desert phase begins. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do. These stalkers are adapted to hunt in each environmental phase, right? But they probably have preferred phases. I'm betting these ice phase stalkers aren't going to be happy when their territory turns into a desert. As if to emphasize his point, another stalker attempted to flank their position, its breath creating clouds of vapor in the frigid air. Jake fired a shot that struck its center mass, causing it to stumble but not fall. So we wait for the climate change? Tom asked, reloading his weapon. Better than that. We use the transition period to our advantage. Sarah, can you map the locations of all 3 artifacts in relation to the environmental zones? Sarah's fingers flew over her controls. Working on it, Captain. Okay, I've got good news and bad news. Good news is all 3 artifacts are positioned near zone transition boundaries. Bad news is their position near zone transition boundaries. Meaning when the environment shifts, those areas are going to be chaos. Maximum environmental stress, confused wildlife, unstable terrain. Rex's grin was visible even through his helmet's visor. Sarah, that's not bad news. That's the best news I've heard all day. The next 4 hours were a masterclass in creative survival. Rather than fighting the stalkers directly, Rex's team used the creature's own hunting instincts against them. They led the pack on a winding chase across the ice fields, always staying just out of reach, using the stalker's superior knowledge of the terrain to guide them toward the first artifact location. When the environmental shift began, the results were spectacular. The temperature rose 60 degrees in 30 minutes. Ice began melting, creating flash floods. The stalkers, perfectly adapted to Arctic conditions, suddenly found themselves struggling in rapidly changing terrain. Now, Rex ordered, and his team made their move. They reached the first artifact just as the nesting ground was transforming from a frozen wasteland into a steaming swamp. The stalkers were in complete disarray, their pack coordination broken by environmental stress. Rex grabbed the crystalline artifact from its pedestal while his team provided cover. 1 down, 2 to go, he announced. Maria, how long until the next phase? Desert phase starts in 6 hours. But Captain, look at this. She pointed to her readings, which showed the displaced stalkers beginning to adapt to their new swamp environment. Their ice-white fur was already darkening, and their movements were becoming more suited to the boggy terrain. They adapt fast, Tom noted with professional respect. Fast, but not instantly. We've got a window. Sarah, next artifact. The second trial proved even more challenging. The artifact was located in what became a desert region populated by sand phase, stalkers that hunted by detecting vibrations through the ground. Rex's solution was characteristically unconventional. We're going to dance, he announced. Dance. Jake stared at him. Captain, have you suffered heat stroke? Trust me, These stalkers hunt by feeling footsteps in sand. But what if we give them too many footsteps to process? Using Maria's Mead device, they create a complex rhythm pattern with their movements, overwhelming the stalker's sensory systems with conflicting vibration signatures. While the confused predators try to track multiple false targets, the team retrieved the second artifact. The third artifact required a different approach entirely. Located in the hurricane zone during the storm phase, it was guarded by aerial stalkers that rode the wind currents like living fighter jets. "I have an idea," Rex announced as they took shelter in the cave system. "But you're all going to think I'm insane." "More insane than challenging the entire Deathworld Council?" Sarah asked. "Significantly more insane than that." Rex's plan involved using the storm itself as transportation. By timing their movements with the hurricane winds and using their environmental suits' limited flight capabilities, they essentially allowed the storm to carry them to the artifact's location. The aerial stalkers, expecting ground-based prey, were completely unprepared for humans falling out of the sky at terminal velocity. They retrieved the third artifact just as the 24-hour timer reached zero. The transport beam that retrieved them deposited the team back on the Vengeance's bridge to find the alien council waiting for them on the main screen. Commander Zzeth's mandibles were clicking in what Rex had learned was either confusion or grudging respect. "Impossible," Counselor Vex declared, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. "No species has ever survived the Caros, for trial on their first attempt." "Well," Rex said, settling into his captain's chair with the three artifacts arranged on his armrest, "I guess that makes us special. What's trial number 2? War Prime Gortha's tentacles ride with what might have been amusement. The trial of ruthlessness has been modified. Your performance on Caros 4 was unprecedented. Rather than facing our champions individually, you will face all three simultaneously." "All three at once? That hardly seems fair." "Fair to whom?" Gortha's laugh sounded like grinding metal. "The champions are not pleased about this modification either. The combat trial took place in a neutral arena aboard one of the Council ships. Rex faced 3 opponents. A crystalline warrior from Vex species that could reshape its body into various weapon configurations, a hulking brute from Gortha's faction that seemed to be made entirely of muscle and bad intentions, and a lightning-fast predator from Zzeth's empire that moved like liquid death. The key, Rex realized, wasn't to defeat them physically. The trial was about breaking their will to fight. And there was one thing humans excelled at that these aliens had never encountered: psychological warfare, through humor. "You know," Rex said conversationally as he dodged a crystal spike aimed at his head, "this reminds me of a joke. 3 aliens walk into a bar." The crystalline warrior paused, confused by the non sequitur. Rex used the moment to continue. The bartender looks at them and says, "What is this? Some kind of joke?" The muscle-bound alien actually stopped attacking to process this information. "I did not understand. Where's the combat strategy in this statement?" "That's the point," Rex explained, dodging another attack while maintaining his casual tone. "You're all so focused on being dangerous and impressive that you've forgotten how to handle someone who refuses to take you seriously." By the end of the combat trial, Rex had his 3 opponents sitting in a circle while he explained the cultural significance of human humor as a coping mechanism for existential dread. They weren't defeated so much as completely baffled by a mindset they'd never encountered. "I yield," the crystalline warrior declared. "Not because I am beaten, but because I am confused, and confusion is more terrifying than pain." The final trial was revealed to be the most insidious. Rex and his crew were presented with a scenario where they could save their ship and escape, but only by allowing a civilian transport filled with refugees to be destroyed by pirates. "Standard protocol for Deathworld species," Commander Zzeth explained, "is to prioritize survival above all other concerns. Please make your choice." Rex looked at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. "Our choice is to save the transport and stop the pirates. Even if it means your own destruction? Especially if it means our own destruction. See? That's the thing you never understood about humans. We're not dangerous because we're good at surviving. We're dangerous because we're willing to die for something bigger than ourselves." The simulation ended, revealing that the entire scenario had been a test. There were no real pirates, no transport in danger. But Rex's choice had been real, and it had been recorded. War Prime Gorth was the first to speak. In 3 trials, you have demonstrated adaptation, psychological dominance, and self-sacrifice. These are not the qualities we expected from a species classified as dangerously unpredictable. No, Counselor Vex added, her voice carrying new respect. These are the qualities of a species that is dangerously principled. We may have been wrong about the nature of your threat. Commander Zzeth's mandibles clicked in what Rex now recognized as laughter. The Deathworld Council accepts humanity as a full member, but I suspect our future meetings are going to be much more interesting. Rex grinned, looking around at the assembled alien fleet that had gathered to watch their trials. Oh, you have no idea. Wait until you meet our diplomats. As the Vengeance prepared to return to Earth with news of humanity's acceptance into the Deathworld Council, Rex couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The aliens had been right to fear humans, just not for the reasons they thought. They weren't dangerous because they came from a death world. They were dangerous because they brought hope, humor, and heroism to a galaxy that had forgotten what those things meant. And sometimes that was the most dangerous thing of all. 10 the most important rule about humans. Give them a challenge, and they wouldn't just meet it. They'd find a way to exceed it, preferably in the most dramatically ironic way possible.